right, folks. Today on Dealmaker Catalyst, we welcome in Miss Wendy. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yep, I am so excited. We're excited about this new podcast. For folks that have followed my other podcast, Burning the Ships, I've talked about this before, but Wendy, you were on I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, and maybe a little bit longer than that, and that has I haven't checked recently, but I would imagine it still is. That's our most downloaded episode we've ever had,
Right.
and rightfully so, because you shared an absolutely powerful story, and about your journey from really childhood to where you are now, the ups, the downs, the in-betweens. It was an emotional interview. It was everything, um, that your story deserves. I mean, you really encapsulated everything. So I encourage folks to who want to get to know you and who you really are in your story to go back and listen to that. Today we're going to go a different route though. We're going to actually talk about some of the tactics and the strategies that you have used along the way to really get outside of your comfort zone and kind of build what you have in the real estate world and in the networking ring that is around you and what you've done with all that. So I'm excited to have you in today to do that. A little bit about your real estate background. You are a real estate agent. You are a real estate investor, buy, hold, and I think you've done kind of a little bit of everything within the real estate world. You do some lending, and kind of connected to the real estate world, but not directly, but indirectly through your network. You have become a big part of a charity that I know is very close to the Dealmaker world, which is Chair the Love. So we're going to talk about that a little bit and what that means to you as well. So with all that, welcome Wendy to Dealmaker Catalyst.
Thank you.
Yep, we're excited to do this. So, Wendy, I guess where I want to start with this again, I can't encourage people enough to go back and hear your story because I think that's the best place to start to really get to know where all this is coming from. But you have mentioned to me before, you mentioned it on that episode we've had, I've heard you talk about this, but you naturally are not an extroverted person. You're an introvert. So like getting in and around the rooms that are full of all these, I guess you would call them A personalities that just love to be around people and socialize. That was not the most comfortable thing for you when you started coming into this real estate world. So I guess my first question to start off with is, did you recognize early on that this was something that you needed to work on to overcome?
No,
Okay.
I operated in my own little bubble
Mm.
for the first 2 years at least. Um, just really winging it. I didn't know anybody in real estate other than agents, but I didn't really know anybody that were investors close to where I could mentor them. I really got started listening to Bigger Pockets podcasts and just figuring it out as I went, made a lot of mistakes, did things the only way I thought they could be done, not knowing there were 1,000 other ways to do them. But no, when I first got started, I think I always say you don't know what you don't know, you don't know. And I didn't realize what I was missing or how much faster I could have done things or easier um, had I been around people who had done this and were very seasoned and could have helped guide me along the way. So,
Yeah. So when what drove you, I guess a different way to ask the question is like, what drove you to get into real estate in the first place? I mean, it is a contact sport. Like you do have to be in rooms and talk to people. So if that wasn't natural to you, what drove you to enter that world?
well, I've always worked for myself. So there is no 401k, there's no retirement, there's no pension, there's no nothing. And getting older, that starts to be a real fear of what am I going to do? And in the moment, when I first started, we had closed our business that was a gym, a training facility for athletes. And so I didn't know where I was going to go next as far as employment wise. And I was, I don't know, 47 years old. So I didn't, the idea of getting a job, I didn't even have a resume. So it seemed like kind of the perfect timing for me to, if I was going to ever venture into that, to give it a try. And so that's what made me get started. And the reason behind the way I went with real estate and the direction I went versus flipping, I decided to do the buy and hold was having no retirement later, trying to build something that would equate to a retirement down the road.
Yep. You shared a story with me. I think it was on the podcast, but it may have just been in another conversation, but about how your first Dealmaker event. Now, I don't know if that was your first big like networking event, but you were talking about your first Dealmaker event, and I think this is so relatable for a lot of people listening. You went in there, you sat at the table, and you hoped that nobody would even notice you there. Like you just wanted to get in there and get out as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Talk us through that. Like it's one thing to say that, but that is from me being someone who, I'm the opposite. I've always just like being around people, and it's not that you don't like being around people, but I want the attention and stuff like that. So when you tell me that, like I was like, man, I don't know that feeling of that anxiety of being in that room and being uncomfortable, but I think a lot of people do. Most people know that feeling. So talk through that feeling and then how you have evolved since that moment.
So I'll tell you, it having those feelings, it stems from self-worth and self-esteem, feeling confident about yourself, your abilities, all of that. When you don't have that to fall back on, that's the result. You're anxious about meeting people. You're afraid you don't fit in. You're afraid they won't accept you. You don't belong here. Like this is the negative self-talk that comes along with that. So that was my first, you know, my first real estate meeting. I'd never gone to meetups. I didn't do that. I didn't really even know about those. So that was my first big one. And I mean, there was probably at that time, this was in 2022, a couple hundred people there. And I didn't know anybody really. I knew of a few people. I recognized a couple people and kind of gravitated to where they were sitting. But I just was praying that nobody would just talk to me, notice me, ask me anything. I just really wanted to sit there and listen and absorb and learn. I wasn't really even there to meet people because I didn't know what to say. Like I didn't feel like I belonged. And at this time, I had already done, oh, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 houses. So it's not like I hadn't done anything, but I definitely have the imposter syndrome. I mean, I still have it. So feeling like I'm in a room of people who have done hundreds of deals and have, so many connections and they do everything the right way and they know what they're doing. I felt very inferior. So I was really just wanting to listen to the speakers, listen to other people, listen to conversations and absorb what I could. But just wanted to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah. What pulled you further into the direction of I got to talk to people? What did it was it an individual conversation or was it just an epiphany? Like I need to do this.
Well, I spoke to Jim. I went up and spoke to Jim and he made me cry. He said he was an introvert too, and that he hates big crowds and he's trying to work on that. And so it made me feel a little more like, okay, I'm not the only one. This is his event and he feels like that. So that made me feel a little more relaxed. And I listen, well, this isn't really, that's a whole nother part. I was going to say I listened to Augie Bilot's talk on Share the Love and watched a video, which was extremely relatable for me and again, made me feel comfortable. And at the time, it was something I was searching for, that sense of purpose. And having a further conversation with him one-on-one, again, just validated a little bit more that I should be here and that if I just talk to people, I can learn a lot, and I can realize that I am not the only one feeling this way. And nothing bad is going to come from just having a conversation. So, having a few key conversations with people like that, Ray Ferguson, I knew Ray Ferguson because he was one of the first people I ever met in real estate. He actually, I think we connected on Facebook and he invited me to come up and tour Petersburg. He spent the whole day driving me around. So, he was there. So, I was like, oh, thank God. So, just having a few key conversations with people really helped relax me. And I don't know, they just really it was very a welcoming experience, and it, put to rest a lot of the fears that you tell yourself.
Right. You mentioned Ray Ferguson, and I know a lot of listeners that will listen to this are in and around the Central Virginia area. Ray runs a fantastic meetup in Colonial Heights.
Yes.
I know you go quite a bit. I
Yep.
I get there occasionally. It's a little bit of a hike for me, but I encourage everybody to look that meetup up, attend it,
Yep.
and it's a great place.
Yeah,
But
his is one of the only
um,
ones I can say I go to regularly, so
yeah, yep, that's a good one. And you mentioned, I mean, I just think I know that everybody can relate to that feeling, and I found it. I mean, this is recently. This is last month. I had an eye-opening moment at our first Dealmaker event when Jim got up. You were there, and Jim got up there, and he said, I didn't know this about Jim as much, but I'm an introvert. To him, Jim's an introvert. I was like, he runs this huge networking monster that's spread all over the country, and he's an introvert. So he said that. And I'm up there in front of everybody right beside him with the microphone thinking, I didn't know that. And then he said, there's 60 people in the room. And he asked everybody, he said, who else can relate? Raise your hand if you're an introvert. Half the room raises their hand. And that was so eye-opening to me because for a couple reasons. Number one, that means half of the people, probably more, that are such an introvert that didn't want to raise their hand, right? But walk through that door with a knot in their stomach, so anxious about like what is behind this door. What am I going to say? That that's more people than not, and they're overcoming that by walking through the
yeah,
door, right? Just like yourself.
yeah.
And that's the first step. And then Jim gave a great piece of advice for those that don't know how or aren't as comfortable walking up to somebody and just initiating a conversation in rooms like that. And it's a simple question. Ask them, well, where are you from originally?
Yep, yep,
What a great question. Because
yeah,
if you're talking to a fellow introvert, well, that's an easy question for them to
right.
answer. And then, oh, you're from Baltimore, Maryland. I love the Baltimore Orioles. Oh, my son loves them too.
Yep.
And you can just now all of a sudden you're in a
'Cause it
conversation.
makes it
So
about the person and not
exactly.
about the real estate. I think that was my fear. Like, people, if I engaged in conversation, they're gonna say, "Oh, well, what do you do? How many properties do you have? What part of real estate are you in?" And I felt like, again, I'm not even really qualified as an investor, so I didn't wanna get into those conversations. But if they just ask me about me, myself, where am I from, all of that, that's an easy conversation. So,
Right. Yeah. I love that. And so you mentioned, I mean, that was 2022. You were already well immersed in the real estate game. And that seemed to be a pivotal moment for you to realize like, oh, I'm doing it, but these folks are doing it. And maybe I can latch on to this environment and pour gas on this fire I've already started. So that sounds like what happened. Is that correct?
somewhat. It really, for
Okay.
me, it showed me a better way of doing things.
Okay.
I was never one that was like, I'm gonna light the world on fire. I got to get as many properties as I can. I gotta, just buy one after the other. And I didn't have a goal of like, I want to do 10 properties this year. I just was so happy to get one done, and then I got another one done, and then I did another one, and it was rolling pretty smoothly. But I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know there was a better way of doing things. I didn't know it was way easier to find money. I didn't know that there's DSCR loans, not buying things in your own name, that there's putting things in LLCs or a trust. Like, none of that. So finding that there are much better ways, learning about some creative financing, which gives you more options, and it it just opened up a whole world of things that I knew nothing about, which then branched into other aspects of real estate I never knew anything about.
Yep. And you you mentioned having those conversations and not like being scared to for somebody to ask, oh, how many units do you have, or how many deals did you do last year, being scared of those questions. But I would imagine you've realized now and pretty quickly in these rooms that most of the folks that you were scared to have those conversations with are probably some of the most welcoming people
Oh, yeah.
because they want, like, a lot of folks, it's kind of a pretty standard trajectory for folks. They don't know anything. They learn a lot. They start doing deals. They scale, and then they get to a point where like the next level of scale for them is to bring a lot of people along with them,
Yeah.
and turn into that mentor and like legacy building role.
Yeah.
Did you see that to prove true in
Oh,
your
yeah.
experience?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, one of the first conversations I had at that Dealmaker with somebody was an older gentleman, and I thought, "Oh, this is comfortable." Like, he's probably just here because he's maybe in the second phase of life and figuring out, like, "What can I do now that I'm retired?" And, this is easy. He talked to me a lot. We actually sat at the same table. It was great. He was very easy to talk to. We didn't really even talk about real estate much, just life. And he was great. And I thought, okay, maybe somebody like we can kind of learn this together. And then Jim called up the next speaker, and it was him, Leon Johnson. And I was like, oh my gosh, like we've just been having this normal conversation. I had no idea he was like one of the
Right.
speakers. And then obviously years later, really getting to know him and what a wealth of knowledge he is and all that he has accomplished. But in those moments, he was just a regular person to me.
Yeah.
He wasn't the Leon Johnson. He was just a regular person that took the time to speak to me, to make me feel comfortable, and it was so relatable. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's so good. And I also think folks that are just starting out underestimate the value they can bring at no matter what level they're at, the value they can bring to a room.
Yeah.
A good mentee is so valuable to a mentor, to the Leon Johnsons, the Jim Ingersolls of the world, because they it drives them to share
Yeah.
what they know and to
Mhm.
mentor people. And to have a good mentee that will receive that information brings them so much value.
Yeah.
And there's other ways you can add value. And we'll get in like you mentioned Augie giving the Chair of the Love presentation. That was the first you really heard of that organization.
Mhm.
Look what that has evolved into for
Yeah.
you. And do you care to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, Share the Love has been very significant for me. Like I said, it came in at a good time in my life. I'd gone through a divorce. It was a whole life changing. My mom had just passed away. So I was really searching. I was at that kind of middle aged point in life where I'm searching for what am I even doing? What does this mean? What is my purpose? All of that. And I decided I was going to go on one of these humanitarian adventures. And when you see how other people live and what their life is like, it makes the problems that we have here much more just minuscule. When I left to go on this first trip, it was, I had deals that weren't going through or problems left and right. But when you get over there and you see that, these people, all they want is to be able to move around. All they want is some hope. They've adapted to not having power. They've adapted to not having a bed to sleep in, no running water. That's normal for them. But to be able to actually not be carried or drag themselves somewhere would just be the answer to all of their prayers. And it seems to make things a little more manageable when you get back here. And the problems just aren't as big anymore. So I've gone on, I don't know, maybe 9 trips at this point, between 2020 really 2023, because my first trip wasn't until 2023, so between 2023 and now, but I love it. It's the humanitarian side is amazing, but, to be honest, there's a lot more benefit to it too in terms of the mentorship, the real estate, everybody pretty much that goes on these trips. I would say 95% of the people that attend these trips are in real estate in some capacity. They're lenders, they're investors, some aspect of real estate. So the conversation always defaults to real estate. And I have learned, I would say 90% of what I have learned has come from these one-on-one conversations with these high-level seasoned investors on some of these trips. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's like I just said, you're adding value by, you see an opportunity of something that moves you through the charity. It's connected to a lot of these people that are in the same real estate environment.
yeah.
Why not immerse myself? And now you're actually bringing value to that charity and those people. And then rising tide lifts all boats, right?
Yep.
You're helping that charity and the folks that are like you're really involved with it. They're really high level real estate folks that are helping you with your real estate stuff. I I want to like key in on that aspect of just bringing value and realizing even if you don't have a single deal under your belt in real estate, um, putting yourself out there and figuring out ways that you can really infiltrate these rooms and environments, even if you're not an extroverted person, you're an introvert, but it will open up doors for you.
Yeah.
And if you lead with value, like where can I get in? Where can I help? Where can I roll up my sleeves and get my hands dirty? And what comes behind that is you're leading with gratitude and value, you're going to get things fed back to you. It's just whether it be through mentorship or deals or whatever the case may
For
be.
sure.
You're doing it for the right reasons. Those things kind of circle back, and you're great, a great example of that. As you have, I mean, I just the next thing I'm gonna touch on just blows my mind. First time you go to Dealmaker 2022, you're in the back of the room, don't want to talk to anybody. Here in a little over a month, I just looked at like the ad for the big Dealmaker event that you first went to. There your picture is front and center. You're going to be on stage because I don't know what you're presenting on, but I can't wait to hear it. So, how does that? How do you reason with that? How do you like
I don't know what Jim was
comprehend the
thinking.
fact and where it's come in just a matter of 3 years or 4 years?
Yeah, I don't know what Jim was thinking asking me. I mean, I still struggle with the imposter syndrome. I still don't feel like what am I doing around all of these people who are so successful, you know? I struggle with, what value could I bring that they don't already have? What can I teach them that they don't already know? And I just, what I'm speaking on is really from basically from obstacles to opportunities. And that is one thing I know. I know obstacles, I know struggles, and I know what it took for me to overcome those to a point that I could just find some success. Um, I think when I stop measuring my success against your success, it helps me because I can view mine just solely from where I came from to where I am now, and that is successful. And I don't want to diminish that because it took a lot to get from there to get to here. So that's generally, what I'm talking about, but it is a very full circle moment to me to have second guessed not even going really at several times wanting to just walk out and leave, to now speaking on stage. I, I hope I don't pass out.
You'll be fine, Wendy. And I can only speak from my experience with you, getting to know you, but you and we're not going in depth here in this episode. So again, go back and hear it on Burning the Ships. But what you've been through and then God, the fortitude to share that and be vulnerable because it's a hell of a story. That's forget all the real estate stuff you're doing and all that, but just sharing that alone, I don't know how many people after we released that episode sent me a message or reached out to me, and you probably got some of this too, but like that episode had me in tears. This is coming from people that know nothing about real estate. It's just a powerful story that people latched on to something in there and they could relate to it, right? not I hope not too many people have experienced the entirety of what you went through, but there were pieces of it that most people can relate to through the obstacles.
Yep.
And so that's where your value is. I mean, there's
Yeah.
so much more value than that,
No,
but
you're right. That's
being
what I
able
have to,
to,
I
yeah,
remind myself that there are way more seasoned people when it comes to real estate than me, but where I can provide some value is the inspiration and just the, motivation for people who are struggling to even get started, struggling to overcome, struggling to feel like they can't do it. It's not for them. It's out of reach. They don't have the money. They don't have the credit. They don't have their situation, whatever it is. Um, like I've always said, real estate is an open playing field. So anybody can do it. Anybody
yeah,
can do it. But yeah, it's more about life. It really is. It's more about just fixing you and letting go of the negative self-talk and the letting go of the person that you've always been to become the person that you need to be.
yep. As a father to a 14-year-old daughter, like your story speaks to me, like to her through me. Like I want to do everything I can to build that confidence in her at a young age because I mean I think I, I'm a guy, right? And guys deal with anxieties and stuff in their own right, but like women and they the world is not fair to them all the time,
Yeah.
right? And so they have a lot of insecurities they deal with and stuff like that. No matter what their circumstances are, you just happen to be faced with a pile of rough circumstances along the way, and you sharing that. I mean, I can't stress enough how much value that brings to not just the real estate space, but beyond that. So I
Thank
appreciate you for that. Um, I'm gonna we're gonna do a little something different on this podcast than we have on my normal one. So I've got a couple questions
All right.
that might challenge you a little bit, but
Probably.
give me some thought and
Okay.
we'll go through
All right.
them. We'll start here. What is one quote that best describes your overall perspective on life?
I would say, gosh, there's a lot of them really. One that's always resonated with me is you are the director of your life and don't play the scripts written by others. That resonates with me a lot because looking and observing, especially with social media, you hold yourself to what someone else's life looks like and where you should be and what you should be doing at this age or this place in your life. Um, so that quote really speaks, I would say, overall in my life to me.
I love that. What is it? It's several famous entrepreneurs didn't make their first million until they were like in their 60s,
Yeah.
right? Right. Colonel Sanders was one of them with KFC. That
I
in his
literally
60s.
just sent
Yeah.
something to my daughter today with the guy who came up with Grey Goose vodka.
Mhm.
79 years old
Yeah.
when
So
that came about, and he just had failure after failure and couldn't get it right, and 79 years old and hit 2.2 billion with the Grey Goose vodka.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that fits that quote perfect. So, all right, what belief did you hold early in your journey that later turned out to be dangerously wrong?
Mm, so I always had the belief, because this is kind of what my mom instilled in me, is you go to college and you get a good job and you work hard. And for me as a girl, then you get married, you have kids, and that's your life. Well, the reason that became a dangerous thing for me to believe was because I failed at that early on. At 18, well, I had dropped out of high school, so college definitely wasn't an option. And then I had had a baby, so I'm a teen mom, so I couldn't just leave and go off to college. So for years, I thought I've already messed it up. Like I'm not gonna be successful because I didn't go to college, therefore, I'm not gonna get a good job. The entrepreneur thing was never an option, that didn't even play a factor. That's like the American dream, that's what you are supposed to do, and I've already messed it up. So for years, I think reframing and reshaping and realizing that that's not how it has to go, That's great for some people, but there are some wildly successful people who didn't go to college, but, through an entrepreneurship, a skill or trade or anything, they have a wonderful life, a very successful life. So getting that out of my head of being my thought for years, I would say that was probably it was a dangerous belief for me because it kept me stuck in thinking I had already failed.
Yeah. Kind of ties into your quote as well.
Yeah.
Being the director, like you were had the mindset of somebody else was directing your life
Right.
essentially, and until you took control there. Yeah, no, I like that. What did you have to give up that you didn't expect when you started winning? And by winning, I mean just finding success and however you want to define it.
That's funny because I struggle with that question because it defaults back to that imposter syndrome. A lot of times I don't feel like I've won or I'm winning, you know? Um, Again, I guess because you compare yourself to a lot of other situations, but I when I look back from where I was and where I am, I'm definitely winning. And I think in order to be able to recognize that and see how far I have come in the life that I have created for myself, I had to give up a huge part of what I've always believed, my thoughts, the way I think, the negative self-talk. I had to let go of really kind of the person I always was and reinvent or recreate this new person that had these different beliefs that I was more open to change. I was open to seeing the positive. I was open to the glass half full versus the glass half empty. Um, so for me, it was shedding that part of me that always kind of held me down and kept me thinking small in order to recognize any win that I had.
Yeah. Is that part of you, does it still linger?
It does. It does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
we
you're
fight
fighting it every
sometimes.
day. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, as long as you're winning the
Yeah.
fight, so that's good. Um, this is a good question kind of around our conversation we've been having around just starting new and kind of talking to the folks that are just trying to figure it out and get going. If you had to rebuild from scratch, and I'm talking about not your life, your real
Real
estate
estate.
journey.
Mhm.
You had, yep, you had to be rebuild from scratch tomorrow. What would you not do again and why?
I would not go slow. I intentionally held myself back. I saw some great deals, but I thought, no, I don't want to go too fast. I should just focus on this one and get this under my belt. And when this is done, then I can look at doing another one. Let me completely get out of this before I look at anything else. So I intentionally moved slower when there was really no need for that. And now in hindsight, I lost a lot of great deals and we're not even in that market anymore and I'll never get those back. So had I purchased more and done more then in 2019, 2020, 2021, I would be in a whole different position right now. So I would say don't hold yourself back. You don't need to just jump and do any and everything and with no due diligence and, no research, but don't hold yourself back and just think you're supposed to go slow at it.
You know what would have sped things up for you is being in the right rooms in 2019.
Yep.
So that's another layer of that answer that I think could help a lot of folks is go get in the rooms, borrow people's beliefs, find the mentors, find the folks that want to coach you and hold your hand, and then they'll give you that belief like, oh, I can take these deals down.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that's great. Um, what is a failure that still influences how you operate today?
So I would say, I believe it was probably 2023 or 4. I prior to that, my niche was really single family homes and more specifically buy and hold. I would buy properties that need work. I would do a cash out refi. I'd rent them out. I'd hold them. So along the lines, after I'd done multiple properties, I deviated from that, and I bought 2 properties that I just wanted. I really wanted, personally. One was a cabin, and one was a lake house. And I
Who
told
doesn't want
myself, "Well, I can Airbnb these to make a little money, but really they're for my family. They can use them whenever they want. But I'll Airbnb them to make a little money." I had no interest in Airbnb, never done Airbnb, didn't know anything about Airbnb. I just kind of told myself to make myself feel better, like, yeah, go ahead and do this. But that really, it messed me up because I was not personally in a position to maintain those properties outside of my normal flow of how I do things and let the business maintain them. So I had no business buying those. And it actually made me pull back from real estate a little bit because I got overwhelmed because when I started now trying to support those properties, it made things tight for everything else. And it it really made me it shifted me in real estate. And I mean it wasn't a failure, but I deviated from my what was working. And any investor will tell you now, you don't get emotional about the properties you purchase. When you're in it and you're trying to make money and you're trying to establish a portfolio, you're buying properties that you could care less about. When you get up here and you're doing great, now you can go buy yourself a lake house, you can go buy a cabin. I jumped too way, 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 way too fast into that. And it really knocked me back. And so I would definitely say that would be considered a failure, deviating from my normal plan.
Yep. It's funny in real estate, more true than most any other industry I'm aware of, but time can mask most failures if you just stick through it. Like, I mean, we I could tell a lot of stories, but we have a handful of properties that ended up being absolute nightmares, but we've held it and we've gotten through it. And now they're some of the best in our portfolio,
Yeah.
because time tends to fix that.
Yep.
And through those failures, you learn a lot, right? I mean, if you're trying to learn, you
Mhm.
can find positive in the failure.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Now they're both
um,
rented out now, but it took
yeah,
me some time to
yeah,
release the idea of I wanna hold on to this for the family. No,
yeah.
they need to be paying for themselves and making a little bit of money. So, finally just rented them both out and it's fine, but I held on to them way too long personally, so
Yeah. So, Wendy, what does the next, I don't know what your relationship is with goals and like visions and stuff like that, but what do you think the next year, 5 years look like for you in the real estate space?
Um, that's interesting because, like I said in the beginning, I am not one that's like, "Okay, I want 5 properties this year." I'm a little more along the lines of, I want a abundant life.
Love it.
And that is more central to I want to be happy, I want the peace, I want the stability, I want the security. It doesn't necessarily mean I want X amount of properties. Um, I would like to acquire some more, but I wouldn't be sad or disappointed in myself if I didn't get a new property or 2 or 3 this year. If one comes along and it's a great deal, I would. Flipping is not really my niche, but I would always, buy properties, same thing, that need work, hold on to them, rent them out. I actually would like to buy a property outside of the country. Personally, again, here we go with that. But
Yeah.
a long-term goal would be to buy a property outside of the country that, again, I could maybe Airbnb there, use it when I want to, but, I'm going to continue to lend. I really like the lending space. I'd like to grow that and do a little more wrap lending, do some larger deals and things like that. The lending feels a little freer to me. I can do that from anywhere in the world. I'm not dealing with contractors and all of that. But I've been away from the rehab space for a minute and I miss it. I would like to get more deals and do them using more creative financing. Um, Augie has taught me a lot about that, and it opens a lot of doors. And I I would like to buy some more properties using some more creative financing.
Yeah. Well, the great thing is like the network that you have built for yourself and around yourself, and like you're insulated in a way now where you've got the resources. Like if you have an opportunity to buy a creative finance deal, you got Augie to lean on. And if you see somebody comes to you and needs to borrow money to flip a house, you got Chuck Glover and other resources you can lean on for some wrap lending and stuff like that. If you want to buy something out of the country, I'm sure somebody in your network. Um, I own a house in Puerto Rico that we bought. Well, I share it with a couple other folks, but we bought 3 years ago with the intent of using it. I've yet to be there other than when we bought it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and it performs okay. It's a short-term rental. I don't manage it, but so the out of the country, I still have that desire to buy something, more houses in the Caribbean, but when the hell am I going to get there? I got two little kids, like we just cannot find time to get away. But anyway, um, Wendy, I um I really appreciate your vulnerability, and sharing a lot of this stuff again with your story. And then um really, I mean, I'm so encouraged. I cannot wait. I think this comes out after the Dealmaker event. So folks who are there will be listening to this, but
Okay.
um, and I'm sure when they're listening to this, they're going to be saying, "She crushed it. How was she possibly an introvert?" So, but it just makes me happy because I know that there's going to be 300 people in that room, and there's probably going to be 50 or more people that are just like you were in 2022, hoping to God nobody talks to them, just kind of sitting in their bubble. And a few people are going to just get uncomfortable, break through that, and eventually they're going to be on stage in a few years. So I think that is very motivational to folks.
Those rooms help you find the people that will believe in you until you can believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. They encourage you, they motivate you for zero gain for themselves.
Yeah.
They get so much out of seeing you grow and become successful. And those are the kind of rooms you want to be in. You don't want to be in the rooms where people are just wanting your money, they want to check, they want, to sell you something. You gotta be in the right rooms, and that's one thing why I gravitate to the deal makers is that's the type of people that go to that. That's the type of people that are giving back their time and their money at Share the Love. They're giving back their knowledge, their resources at Dealmaker. It's the same
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. And the whole deal maker culture, what Jim has built, like he's built a culture around exactly who he is.
Yeah.
He says it a lot, your net worth or your network is your net worth, and be a go-giver and all those things, but he actually lives that himself, and he always has. And then he has just built um, organically this great culture around that brand, the Dealmaker brand, and I'm proud to be a part of it. I know you are as well. And folks listening to this, I mean, this is the name of the podcast, right? This is what we're trying to continue to do is just give back and motivate people wherever they're at. I mean,
Yeah.
we've kind of been talking to folks that are just getting started, but this doesn't apply to folks just getting started. I'm a good example of someone who I had reached some level of success with buying and holding property, but I knew nothing about the lending space. And I got uncomfortable. And I remember, to your point, a mentor at another event, um, who was 10 times what we are as a lender now, but she grabbed my hand and basically said, borrow my belief. Like, I believe that you can do this. Borrow that. Let me show you how to do it. And it's grown to what it is. But I just had to get uncomfortable, right?
Yes.
And go into something new. And so there's so much that can be taken away from this. But Wendy, I could ramble on and on about that. I am very appreciative of your friendship, your time, and everything else that comes along with that. And I thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Have a good one.
You too.
That wraps up this episode of the Dealmaker Catalyst. If you want to keep learning from elite operators and plug into a national community that lives this stuff every day, check out Dealmaker Catalyst. Make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who's serious about leveling up. And we'll see you on the next Dealmaker Catalyst.